Hey class, sorry for the change of plans today. Welcome to week 12, where we're going to talk about creating vision and strategic direction. We can come back to any questions or any review that you guys want next week. I am going to keep this a little bit brief just to make sure that we get the content covered for you. I apologize that I'm suddenly not well enough to do the lecture normally, and I appreciate your flexibility when I had to rush off to the doctor. So here we go. We are just going to start, as always, with our brief review from last week. So just as a reminder, last week we talked about different types of power and how leaders use power and the importance of being ethical when you are in a position of authority. As we talked about a few different types of leadership, from transformational, like Ted Lasso, to charismatic, like Princess Diana on the good side, or like a cult leader on the bad side. To coalitional, where really leadership depends on partnerships, so things like unions and international collaborations come in there. To the Machiavellian style, which is that really, by any means necessary type of approach to leadership, very high on strategy, but also can be considered quite ruthless. So the different types of power that we covered were hard power and soft power, where hard power is really just based on asserting formal authority and enforcing rewards and punishments. So someone like a Machiavellian leader would use that quite heavily. Whereas soft power is based on personal qualities, tends to be more relational in approach. And so that can also rely on just being seen as trustworthy. So whether that is because of your values and who you are on sort of the human side, or if that is because whether people like you or not, they see you as an expert with good intentions, soft power can be extremely effective. And we see that in transformational and charismatic and coalitional leadership, really all of them, but especially I would say in transformational. So Ted Lasso was a great example of really relying on soft power much more than his position as head coach or authority. So how do followers respond to different types of power? Well, sometimes people just comply. They do what they're told without necessarily agreeing to it, especially if it's someone, their leader really just relies on hard power. Sometimes they resist, so they can become oppositional. This happens when people really overdo hard power, micromanage. And other times followers respond with full commitment. They're really on board, they're enthusiastically engaged. And we're going to talk about some ways that vision and connecting to people's sense of purpose really increases commitment. So this is going to come up today. And that does tend to rely on more use of soft power and really building those relationships. We talked about politics, both in the literal kind of government politics kind of sense, but also in the interpersonal politics, managing the dynamics between people on a smaller scale kind of a sense. In terms of ethics, of course, we all know not to abuse power, but we did want to go through and just talk about that content to acknowledge that unfortunately that is something that still happens, although we all have HR policies and we learn about ethics. We know this is something that we always need to acknowledge and be mindful of, and that a good, responsible leader will always check themselves and ask, am I making decisions that are for the benefit of my team, of my organization, or am I doing this, to please myself or to advance myself only? And so really kind of checking ourselves and our motivations when we're in leadership positions is something that we want to do on a continuous basis. So for today, we're going to build on this kind of understanding of different types of leaders and the use of soft power, and really look at how an effective leader, so someone who's really charismatic, someone who's really transformational, someone who builds partnerships, how these people use their relationships, use their knowledge of their team as individuals to really connect people to vision and mission. We're going to talk about what the difference is between vision and mission, and we're going to talk about aligning each individual person on our team with that vision. So whatever the individual's values are, we really want them to see how their personal sense of purpose connects with the organization's vision. And that is something that also builds on our previous conversation about motivation, getting people motivated, keeping people motivated. Then you guys are going to hop out of this recording, go watch a TED Talk. Then you're going to have another little module where we'll talk about strategic direction, and I'll give you guys a scenario that you can discuss on the discussion board if you choose to engage with that, which I hope that you do. So the difference between a vision and a mission, vision statements tend to be future focused, really aspirational, and it's usually a shorter statement or phrase that you can kind of come back to time and again. It's that kind of core idea that we're all working toward. The mission statement is a little bit more practical. So this is really kind of what are we doing day to day? Both of these things should be aligned with our values. Both of these things should feel like we want to buy into them. But the vision statement is more kind of an inspirational hook, where the mission statement really directly relates to strategy, is much more kind of day-to-day present focus, and might even refer to specific tasks or products or services. So an example of this coming from CAMH in their most recent strategic plan, their vision is health redefined. So they want to redefine the way we think about health. So you can see that's kind of a short phrase that we could come back to time and time again. And it makes us think about values like courage, respect, excellence. I would maybe even say like things like innovation could fall in there. So their day-to-day mission then, how they actually move toward that vision in their day-to-day work. We are dedicated to patient, family, and community well-being. We improve access to integrated care, answer the most difficult questions about mental illness, and remove barriers to belonging. Together, we choose hope. So you see they're kind of evoking these values-based concepts like hope. They're also really talking about things like equity and access and inclusion. So there's a lot of values kind of coming through here that align with the values they've identified of courage, respect, and excellence. But you get a feel for what they do every day. They take care of people and their families, they're part of a community, and they make sure that they're providing integrated care. So really kind of holistic treatment and trying to break down stigma about mental illness. So leadership vision. If vision is this vivid mental image of what the organization wants to achieve, it's ambitious but realistic, and it's set in the future. Having a strong vision we can come back to over and over again is related to better performance and higher motivation and more employee satisfaction. There's a few examples here. So like Coca-Cola saying their vision, what they are working toward is a Coke within arm's reach of everyone. So they want every single person on the planet to be able to reach for a Coca-Cola. IKEA wants to create a better everyday life for many people. So they want to be accessible to lots of people, and they want to just make people's lives a little bit better. What just happened to my screen, guys? Sorry. So what are some characteristics of people who lead through vision? They communicate really clearly. They develop that sense of courage and conviction, like we're going to work towards something that might be new or bold or feel really kind of big, like re-envisioning health. That's a big goal, but we're going to develop courage and conviction that we can work toward that. So we lead with that sense of purpose, even over profits. So not that profits don't matter, but having this kind of united purpose matters more. Mission, on the other hand, so you can see in this image here on the left that having a strong mission leads to employees being more engaged at work, feeling like their pay is appropriate, wanting to stay with the company, recommending their company as a good place to work, and recommending their company's products and services. So basically, people are going to believe in their job more and want to stay in it and do it better if they buy into the mission. So what the heck is the mission? It's the core reason that the organization exists. It's the what we do. It guides decisions and remains stable despite external changes. So if I go back to the CAMH example, what they do is provide mental health services. That's what they do regardless of what's happening in the world around us, regardless of fluctuations in the economy or different people being in charge politically. At the core, they will still do that. What mission does is it gives people a sense of stability during changes. People know what their job is, and it gives employees that sense of engagement and pride because it's hopefully something that they actually really believe in. So companies with clear missions will tend to outperform their competitors. So the leader's job in looking forward is to basically act like a GPS system, really providing direction and this sort of constant awareness of the ultimate destination. And they might have to kind of recalculate the route to keep organizations thriving. If CAMH's goal is to rethink healthcare, then realistically, they might have to make slight adjustments to how they do that, depending on which politicians are in power, but they are still completing their mission of providing mental health services. They're just going to have to keep thinking about how they can grow and adapt and advocate and all of those things. Superior performance results from leaders' choices, not luck. So it's very intentional. It's not wishy-washy. Yes, the vision is often something that sounds really big and really aspirational, but it is a real goal. And so this then relates to the idea of strategic action. Vision gives that sense of purpose and meaning, keeping people motivated. Leaders make the connection then to strategic actions that help keep us moving toward that make sure that our mission is getting us there. And then this is just an old saying that's really hard to find a clear attribution for. I saw it attributed to Old English, but I also saw it attributed to a Japanese proverb. So life without vision is drudgery. Vision without action is an empty dream. So basically, if we're living our lives without a sense of vision and purpose, it's just we're slogging through it. We don't have this sort of inspiration and drive. It can be boring. It can be defeating. On the other hand, if all we have is vision and we don't have any action at all, then we're just living in the clouds, living empty dreams. So we need a balance of vision and action. So there are 4 types of leaders then that balance vision and action differently. So the uninvolved have both low vision and low action. Obviously, that's bad. Then you have the doer who's really high on action, but they're just like busy like a bee, not really sure what they're doing or what the purpose of it is. They work hard, but it's a bit sort of all over the place or lacking direction. The dreamer might be really high on vision but low on action. So they could be really inspirational and kind of really unite people around an idea, but then there's no follow through. So an effective leader is high on vision and high on action. No surprise there, because that's when you're really able to turn the vision into reality. So how do we get the action part? How do we do the strategic action? So we'll come back to this a little bit at the end of today as well. But for now, just to lay some groundwork, strategic leadership is about anticipating what's going to come next and then adapting to it. So trying to sort of move with the changes and stay ahead of things. Leaders have to navigate complex information, sometimes really unclear information all the time, and pull in diverse perspectives. So if we know that our funding is going to change depending on who wins a political election, how are we going to plan for that? How are we going to adapt to that? Many executives spend less than 3% of their energy on future planning. So if we don't think ahead and we don't plan ahead, if we're not prepared to kind of roll with those punches, that has a negative effect on our success. And what this point here is saying is that a lot of executives do not spend enough of their time anticipating and planning for the future. A lot of times people are just sort of treading water and just keeping the day-to-day going, but we need people who can hold that vision and think ahead. So in terms of a strategic leadership framework, vision is our aspiration for the future. Mission is our core values and purpose. Strategy is how we achieve that purpose, how we work toward that vision. And then the execution of that strategy is literally like the operational steps of what we're doing. So vision links the present to the future and keeps people energized. So no surprise here, this is a concept we've touched on before. Vision basically helps us look at what we're doing day to day and see how it connects to our future goals, our aspirations, our inspirations. And so we want to always balance our short-term tasks, our day-to-day work that's not always exciting, with our long-term goal of doing something really, values-based and important. So having a clear vision motivates people to contribute their best on a day-to-day basis, even when the day-to-day can be dull. It provides purpose beyond the day-to-day because we see how it connects to the big picture. And so the example here is a stone cutter building a cathedral versus cutting a stone. If I spend all day making bricks, that's not fun work. But if I know that I'm contributing to building something beautiful, that matters. So this is where our vision gives meaning to the work that we do. My recording is probably going to cut off in the next 10 seconds, so I'm just going to pause here.